Hi, I'm Kat Wildman, and welcome to the Powered by Diversity podcast. Today, we're joined by Ruth Miller, an absolute expert in inclusive hiring and AI. She's currently part of a government advisory board, the Better Hiring Institute, whose aim is to make UK hiring faster, fairer, and safer. In this episode, we discuss some of the surprising ways that AI is used in the hiring process by both recruiters and candidates, where it can help remove bias, where it can add to it, and what Ruth recommends in terms of navigating the AI landscape because it's here to stay. Hi, Ruth. Thank you so much for joining us today. So today we're talking all about AI and hiring bias. So will AI remove hiring bias or make it worse? That is the question that we're looking at today. And it's super pertinent because a lot of recruiters that I'm speaking to and a lot of organizations are trying to use AI in various different guises to try and remove bias. So please tell us, Ruth, first, do you want to start by introducing yourself to everybody?
Yeah, that'd be super. Hello, everybody. Thanks for inviting me on today, Kat. So my background is I was a head of recruitment within FTSE 100 retail and financial services. And I've been a self-employed consultant for the last 15 years. So I mainly deliver training and projects really to a wide range of well-known public and private sector organisations all over the world. But probably the recent thing that I'll be talking about a little bit today as well is that I've become advisor to the new government Better Hiring Institute, which is a new body formed to consult and advise on recruitment best practice within the UK. So I've had some interesting conversations about AI and how its use will affect hiring.
Oh my goodness, what an expert. This is excellent. I love it.
Well,
I
we'll
love
see.
this. Perfect. We're going to get your expert point of view. So let's start with an overview of what sorts of AI. So how can AI show up in the recruitment process? Because I feel like there's a lot of ways where you don't even notice that it's there. So do you want to start with that?
Absolutely. So I suppose I thought I might take that back a step in terms of thinking about some of the issues, the challenges, what's going on for recruitment teams, for HR directors within the market. As you're aware, employers are receiving more job applications than ever, whereas recruitment teams, as we're seeing by the number of people looking for work on LinkedIn, recruitment teams are generally shrinking. And as we see with comments from job applicants on sites like LinkedIn, or we hear from our friends and our colleagues, many companies aren't managing this level of applications very well because most job applicants hear nothing back, which is very poor, of course, isn't it, for candidate experience and, of course, for those organisations' reputations. There is AI recruitment software coming onto the market, which will make it easier for employers to identify and source talented individuals wherever they hang out online. So there's going to be a lot more around, how they sort of, I suppose, put spidey tentacles out to whoever candidates hang out and try and source them. And also the technology that will help them with screening and assessing job applications. And already we're seeing, aren't we, the use of chatbots for recruitment to help applicants find suitable jobs on a company's careers site and administer the interview process. So I suppose that's a bit of background. But if we're moving on to talking about AI and a bit of labour market background, many job applicants are already using AI, such as ChatGPT or other generative AI, to help them create CVs, cover letters, or answer the questions and job assessments which employees ask them to complete as part of the recruitment process. So what I mean by that, what do I mean by candidates using AI to help with job assessments, is that when companies use, say, a video interview software or an online test or assessment software, candidates are able to use AI like ChatGPT again or other Gen AI to answer these questions and complete these tests. And as these are completed remotely online, then organisations have no control over candidates using them to complete any sort of assessment. So what companies are finding that actually then these job assessments, these applications can actually be of a really high standard. Sort of thinking, great, I've got a really good, increase in quality of my job applications. But actually then if they're completed by generative AI, actually when companies go on to interview these job applicants or invite them to assessment centres, then can be a real drop in quality because a candidate's in-person interview or assessment it perhaps isn't as strong as what they've completed using AI. So that's the background of what's going on from my point of view.
Wow. So it's AI talking to AI. We're going to get to the stage where it's an AI
Yeah,
bot recruiting, interviewing another AI bot. I didn't realize that candidates were using
yeah,
ChatGPT to help them answer questions in the moment.
absolutely.
Oh,
And I've got some stats on that in a minute, which might be interesting.
oh my
But yeah,
goodness. Oh wow. Okay. Well, so that has kind of just biased me against AI. So tell me, how in your view could AI actually remove the hiring bias then?
okay. Well, what are the positives? So if an organization has got recruitment software that can identify individuals who have profiles on a wide range of social media, let's say, or CV databases, or hang out on other platforms online, then it's possible for companies to search through a wider pool of candidates for jobs than they would be able to do if they relied on a team of recruiters, because obviously they've got limited time and resources, haven't they? So that can improve, the outreach, if you like, identifying a more diverse range of candidates for jobs, and improve that speed and scale of hiring, and then automate the admin processes for those people being, processed through software, brought to the attention of actual humans to review those applications. And there is, with sourcing or assessment then done by an AI software, there's the opportunity to minimize human biases in the hiring process. But we'll go on to talk about those biases in a minute and the negative side of that. But obviously, that can be positive, that software, if it's programmed correctly, can minimize human bias. So I've got some data from a consulting firm called Arctic Shores, and they presented to the Better Hiring Institute that I mentioned, the government body that I'm a part of, a couple of weeks ago. And their data showed that out of a study they did with 2,000 students and recent graduates, that 72% of them are using generative AI every week. And 7 in 10 of them will use something like ChatGPT or another similar generative AI in a job application or assessment within the next year. So that's 7 in 10. So 70% of them. And interestingly, a third of those 2,000 students or recent graduates would not work for an employer who banned generative AI. So we're looking at diversity statistics here. What Arctic Shores found that out of those 2,000 students, 23% of Black students use AI for looking for or applying for jobs or using assessments, compared to 16% for white peers. So that's 23% against 16%. They found that neurodiverse candidates use AI for longer each week than neurotypical job applicants. And actually, interestingly, candidates with a lower household income are using AI more than those with high household incomes. And 44% of candidates believe Gen AI levels the playing field. So in terms of avoiding bias, those diverse candidates are perhaps getting a bit of extra support when perhaps, they haven't got, the social networks from perhaps coming from a higher socioeconomic background, or they might have some barriers in place, in life, which have perhaps prevented them from accessing certain roles before, and now able to access them. So some real positives about, how AI can help with increasing diversity and help diverse candidates.
Oh my gosh, it just took me on a real mental journey there. I was horrified by the fact that 70% are using it. But then actually, when you look at those groups who are using it, you can totally understand why, if
Yeah,
it's helping them to talk in the language that the person who is interpreting their application is going to want to hear. Who
yeah,
can blame people, honestly? It's giving people a leg up and helping them to navigate this coded world,
yeah.
that otherwise they may not have access to. Wow. Okay. So let's go on to what AI could do to make bias worse in the hiring process.
Yeah, okay. Well, um, we've always heard, is the term, if you put rubbish in, you get rubbish out. So I guess the challenge is that if companies use AI for recruitment when there are pre-existing biases within the data, or the AI algorithm is machine learning using that data, then that can make hiring bias worse. So I'm going to give an example there of one you might have heard of already, or some of your listeners might have heard of already, which is from Amazon AI recruiting and when they used AI. So Amazon developed an experimental in-house AI system for ranking candidate CV. So they developed it themselves and programmed it themselves. And what happened there is, in effect, Amazon's system taught itself that male candidates were preferable. So it started to penalise CVs or resumes that included the word women's, as in women's chess club captain, and it downgraded graduates of 2 all-women's colleges. And there was an actual big study done by Dastin in 2018 about that. So there's a lot of data if you're wanting to Google that and have a look at it. So Dastin noted how the machine learning algorithm was trained on data that reflected the historical dominance of men in the tech sector. So as the algorithm learned and as it got more applications, it actually prioritised men over women because of that historical bias. So, Amazon are not using this now. Amazon shelved this system when they became aware of its problems. But it's a good example of the risk of using AI to assess job applications without knowing how the AI was programmed or whether there was bias in its data or bias in how it's going to be machine learning as it receives more and more applications. So if we now look, we go back to how candidates are using generative AI. So they're using it to create job applications or do online tests or assessment for employers who are asking them to submit those as part of the application process. So when I speak to different organisations, and I deal with a really wide range of large public sector clients in the UK to all the way to sort of global private sector businesses, I hear a growing concern about how to handle these job applications and CVs which are created using ChatGPT or other generative AI, because it's hard to assess, isn't it, whether they reflect a candidate's actual abilities or experience. It feels a bit, what I hear from most of my clients, it just doesn't feel very individualised. If you're getting a job application which is created by ChatGPT or a candidate submitted an assessment you've asked them to do, it doesn't feel very personal and individual. But it can actually be really, really strong. So what do you do about that? So because of this, many of them are thinking of ways that they can discourage applicants from using AI, perhaps having a disclaimer on their career sites that they won't accept applications created with this. So that's what they're thinking. They're thinking of going, no, please don't use this. But, my view, and this is what I say when I'm training clients, is that if we think about the data I mentioned earlier, where candidates from more disadvantaged socioeconomic backgrounds or people with disability or who are neurodiverse or people of colour are using generative AI more often to create a job application or to support with doing an online job assessment, then banning the use of it actually could affect them disproportionately. So interesting, as we know, many organisations are keen to reach out to these groups so that their employee base is more diverse and reflects their customers more effectively. So then banning AI would therefore backtrack on this strategy, wouldn't it? Because you would have less people getting the support to be able to access jobs and get through applications. So my personal belief and what I say to my clients is that AI is here, isn't it? So use of it by organisations and job applicants is only going to increase. So rather than banning its use or seeing it as a negative, organisations need to see it as a positive because it can help them source previously unrepresented talent for their organisations, as we mentioned earlier. And it can also help that talent with how to create a strong job application. Of course, this comes at a cost, doesn't it? Because this means that many businesses are going to have to invest in new software and they'll need to review their sourcing and administrative processes to reflect the use of AI. So it's like, well, candidates are using it. What are we going to do in terms of our software, in terms of our processes to reflect that they use it? And it may also mean that organisations have to review how they test and assess candidates online, as it's been proven that AI can complete online tests and assessments better than around 98.8% of job applicants. So the software is, AI is always going to win, is always going to get through your test. So if that's the case, you need to review your process. And certainly when I see, big global companies who get tens of thousands of early career job applicants and use a lot of online software to actually narrow that funnel down, that's a big challenge, isn't it? Of course, all sorts of organisations have that challenge, but the other challenge is from perhaps smaller to medium-sized organisations or public sector or not-for-profit, who can't actually have the same budgets to invest in new software all the time to meet the AI challenges. I don't know the answer to that, but it's coming.
It's such an interesting developing debate, isn't it? Because actually, when you think about it, you're just thinking, well, you're using it to find and filter candidates. Why should they not use it to be able to apply for the job? And also, there is the argument of, if they've had the nous about them and the technological, ability and skill and that innovative thinking to be able to go, do you know what? I'm going to plug in generative AI to this application. I'm going to get it to answer for me. They could, but that they're all skills that they could bring to the job itself. They could bring that skill set in and, all sorts of things. They could be using that skill set for all sorts of things, not just applying for the job. So it is such an interesting debate. I am quite interested to see how this will pan out, how organizations are they going to work with the fact that this is happening, or are they going to try and work against it in things like banning AI, which is just trying to stop the tide from coming in, isn't it? It's here.
Absolutely. You can't ban something that's here, and you need to manage it and work how you can work with it, don't you? But interestingly, even I think since we set up this podcast a couple of weeks ago, there have been quite a lot of articles about organisations saying, gosh, I can see how applicants are using it more and more. What do we do about that? And lots of talk about banning. But interestingly, when I hear feedback from a candidate's point of view, 100% of candidates are saying, company and organisation, you use AI, or some type of tracking, even if it's not AI, to actually review my application already. It's usually, some sort of tracking software that searches for keywords or searches for salary information or job titles. You use that already, and then AI perhaps will plug in on top of that once organisations get better software. So if organisations are using that, applicants think, hang on, you can't tell me now not to use AI for my job application. I'm just doing what you're doing, which is, making the best of the technology available to help me. So I think actually it would really backtrack on organisations if they start banning it or putting these disclaimers on their website about candidates using it. Because I think, as we saw with the stats earlier, particularly younger people will think, well, if you don't support the use of AI, then, to be honest, I think you're a little bit old-fashioned. I don't want to work for you.
Fair enough. It says a lot about a company if they are reacting in that way instead of thinking about it from an open-minded perspective and go, well, hang on a minute. That actually shows a lot of initiative. It shows a lot of creative thinking and a lot of technological nous. I think it says a lot about the culture of the company and what it's going to be like to work there if they're going to just be archaic about it and try and ban something that they are already doing themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's leave our listeners with something that they can take away then. So what would you recommend for people who are maybe in the position of looking to hire candidates? They're trying to reach them where they're at, which a lot of our customers say they're having trouble reaching candidates where they're at. They're fishing in the same pools over and over again. They're having trouble reaching out to new talent, and they're getting the same sorts of applications time and time again. Firstly, how can they use AI to try and reach candidates where they hang out, as you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to give a few more stats because I think it's a good bit of a background to that answer. So we go back to that Arctic Shores consultancy data. Around a third of HR leaders are using generative AI during the hiring process at the moment, but actually 62%, so getting on for 2/3, believe that AI can help them hire the best candidates. So I think companies and organisations are generally on board that it can help. And I think they're on board because actually AI is likely to take away the more transactional and admin type of part of the role, certainly of the role of the recruiter, and certainly other roles within organisations. So, I think they recognise that actually, if we're broadening the skills we're looking for, so we're not necessarily looking for skills that AIs can do, it means that we're looking for greater enhanced social, emotional and higher cognitive skills rather than the current focus on exact qualifications and industry experience that a candidate's got to have. So in answer to your question, I think that, if companies bring in AI who can source candidates across different platforms, different markets, but they can also perhaps, program them in to look for certain, those sorts of skills we're talking about, rather than, a really narrow focus on just having certain qualifications and industry experience. Then I think that automatically broadens a candidate pool. And that's what people can't do at the moment. If organisations can't handle the very high numbers of job applications at the moment, that's not actually possible. Whereas if you've got an AI which can do a lot of the, searching out people for you, if it's programmed right, from a wider pool, and then bring them to humans' attention, already you're sourcing from a more diverse pool. And then if we're looking at assessing candidates from a wide, diverse pool, who have these sort of, social, emotional, higher cognitive skills and wouldn't have been previously considered in a job search, then this could be a real positive in reducing bias. I can see what's happening, and this is no secret. The Better Hiring Institute and the government are looking to actually bring in regulation to ensure bias is minimised. There's going to be legislation to drive how AI for hiring is used in the UK, and I think this is likely to happen over the next couple of years. So I think it'll be interesting to see how all that works, whether certain activities that companies are currently doing will be blocked, such as video interviewing and the use of actually assessing, video interviews and behaviours on video interviews as part of a hiring process, which does currently take place. My view is that could be banned. Some sort of facial recognition could be banned, and other types of AI assessments. So, I think it's a watcher's space.
Insider information. I'm absolutely loving it. How interesting. How do people use facial recognition software in video interviews?
Well, it'll be that software is programmed, as with any assessment software. There's been a wide pool of candidates assessed, looking at what are the positive attributes that somebody has, either what they say when they're speaking, or what they write into the platform. And the same is true of facial recognition, that certain behaviours from a norm group are programmed in that as favourable or not favourable, and companies use them to assess whether they are looking for the right people. I'm not a massive fan of that, to be honest, because I think that brings in bias already, but it is being used as part of the hiring process by many global organisations.
Wow, I did not know that at all. This is absolutely mind-boggling, isn't it? I think to close, if you could leave one pearl of wisdom for our listeners, what would it be in terms of navigating this world of hiring in AI?
I think it would be, don't just blindfold yourself and say, well, we don't want to be involved in this, so we're just going to have no, we won't accept its use. I think it's here to stay. I think it's how can we use AI, even if we're an organisation which can't actually afford really expensive new software. How can we use AI to attract a more diverse pool of candidates, to assess those candidates, and to look wider than we currently have in terms of the skill base of people who could join your organisation? Because I think there's some real opportunities, and I think there'll be opportunities even without spending a lot of money. I think certainly because candidates are using it a lot more, that we're getting perhaps more applications from groups who may not have previously come to us. I recognise there are the challenges because we're getting a lot of applications; they're really hard to assess. But hopefully over the next couple of years, that will become easier because some of the technology available to us. So I guess it's grip it, start to use it, look at what the positives can be for you as an organisation, and the positives for your candidates.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, Ruth. This has been amazing.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can find us on socials at PP Diversity and at Powered by Diversity on LinkedIn. And as always, please get in touch, kat@poweredbydiversity.org, for all your equity, diversity and inclusion needs, and with any questions you'd like to hear answered on future episodes.